Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Stitch Bliss Corner. Hello to my subscribers, thank you very much for doing that. And anyone who's visiting for the first time, welcome. Now this is going to be a little bit unusual way of starting this, because I'm going to show you some pictures of the human eye and explain a little bit about it. Now I realise that a lot of Flosstubers know about the anatomy of the eye, I realise that. But it is relevant to what I'm going on to with the Pointillism and how it is so relevant to our stitching. So I've done a few sketches here. This one looks as though it's been startled by something, but it's just to show you a picture of the human eye. And what I'm doing there, I'm just showing you that green because I'm going to show you a cross section of the eye, and that green will come into relevance with explaining the structures. I'll get back to that in a minute. Now here's the picture that I rigged up here. Now that green that I showed you, that's the iris. Now this is sideways. If you cut an eye sideways and looked into it, this is what you'd see. The outside is the cornea, that's the rounded part on the front. Then you've got the iris, and that's what dilates and constricts according to the amount of light coming in. And then this here is the lens of the eye with the little ciliary muscles that hold it into position. And when you're stitching, that lens gets a big workout because it has to stretch and it has to flatten, and then it has to widen out according to what you're looking at. So if you're focusing on fine stitching for a long time and your eyes feel a bit fatigued, well, that's one of the reasons, because these little ciliary muscles, they get exhausted. So it's always a good idea when you are stitching to look away at something in the distance for a while before you go back to your work, just to give them a little rest. But anyway, that's something else altogether. And then of course at the back of the eye you've got the retina, and then you've got the optic nerve that goes off to the brain to tell it all the things that you're looking at. Okay, so what I've done here is just go through it again from the front. So when you're actually looking, sorry, how have I got this? Yeah. When you're actually looking at an eye, somehow I've started at the bottom, I'm working up, you're looking at someone's face and you look at their eye and you see the colour of their eye, the iris. Some people have brown eyes, blue eyes and so on. And then you see what looks like a black dot in the middle, which people call the pupil. Now that black dot is actually the back of the eye, the retina that you can see, because it's like a big window that you're looking through. Remembering, of course, that the lens is also in between the front of your eye, the cornea, then you've got your iris, and then behind that you've got the lens. Okay, so when you get a photograph taken and you get that red, sometimes they call it red eye, that's actually the retina, because the person's looked directly into the light, the flash, and it's caught their retina actually on the film. And here well, that's supposed to be black there, but I gave up scribbling it in. And then that was just the lens, just to show the ciliary muscles pulling, and so that you're focusing. And of course when you get older, and sometimes you can get fogging of the lens, and that's what they call a cataract. And they can take the cataract out these days and put an artificial one in that works really well. Excuse me for that. That's me trying to put elastic on my glasses so they don't go flying down my nose all the time. But I'm afraid that's come to naught. Right, so anyway, that's just a very rudimentary explanation of the eye. And the retina that I was talking about at the back of the eye has rods and cones. And they're the ones, the little nerve endings, that are responsible for recognizing colour and how dim the lighting is. So, let me just get organised here. Just bear with me for a moment, I've got so many bits and pieces. We're going to get on to Seurat very shortly. So, now Seurat was very interested in the eye and the science of colour. And he found that he followed a chemist. Now this is called The World of Matisse. It's Time Life. And he was introduced to some of his theories with this monumental picture, which I'll show you in a minute. He was a shy young man who was willing to lead a revolution in painting. Perhaps he would also have led a social revolution, for his circle of friends consisted of some of the most radical artists and writers of the time. Although Seurat never spoke of his political beliefs, this is going on about the painting, I'll get to that in a minute. Now it says here, Seurat worked out divisionism or pointillism, a system of stippling the canvas with individual dots of pure complementary colours, red and green for example. He did not mix pigments on a palette or combine them with his brush on the canvas, for he believed that the small dots, each the same size, laid precisely side by side, would combine themselves to produce the full range of natural colours in the viewer's eye. Later, Seurat made the system seem more scientific by adding geometric rules. Now, I have a little experiment here for this idea of his, what did he call them? Complementary colours, that's right. Now, if you look at that for long enough, you're supposed to be able to see green. Now, one member of this household cannot see the green, but I can see like a green halo around there. And that's a little bit of the idea of the science of colour, and how if you put red there on a picture, in combination with other dots, you can get an impression of green from red, which is, well, beyond my understanding. Now, in Paris in 1859, Seurat, with other painters, lodged a work for all the establishment to have a look at, to see whether he would be able to display his work in the big art galleries in Paris. And this is the one that he put forward. And it's called the Bathers of here we are. Bathing place or bathing party of Asnières, that's right. And this is all tiny, tiny little dots that he's put there. Although this isn't a pure pointillism, because he has got some little dabs of colour in there as well. And his work was roundly rejected by the establishment. And there was a group of other painters, Degas, who we've got here, Van Gogh, or Van Gogh they call him, Degas, Gauguin, all artists with their own styles who had been rejected as well. And they formed a society of independent artists. Anyway, it didn't put the man off, put it that way. Just being rejected, maybe that spurred him on. Because the next one that he put out was this one here. And I've printed it so that it's, here we are, there. And this is called Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte. And it took him 2 years to paint this, or to dot it. It's also called his manifesto painting. And there's a website, webexhibits.org, that you can go to and have a look. Now this is a very big work, 10 foot wide, or 3.4 metres, by 7 foot long, 2.13 metres. 2 years it took him to complete that. Now, all dots, no brush strokes. And I've got some close-ups here so that you can see what I've been banging on about with these reds and all that sort of thing, because if you look close up you can see there are all sorts of different combinations of dots there. And that is part of the painting. Near the dog, above the dog there. But from a distance, it looks green, doesn't it? Or a greeny, there's a bit of shading in there. But generally speaking, your eye, your cones, I think they're the ones responsible for colour. It could be, I think so. I think it's the rods that do the lightness. Don't hold me to that. But I think that's right. And that's a super, super close-up. And they said that the oil painting, you know how painters usually, when they're painting with the oils, they mix it on their palette and apply it to the canvas. But he found that oil was really good for just putting his dots on, because it didn't run like water paint would or any other medium. So he just stood there and laboriously dotted for a long, long time, which is a bit like a Haid, really, isn't it? You're stitching and you're doing all that confetti. I'm thinking, why? Well, now, can I leave some out? Can I just do several of the same colour? Will it matter? Well, it probably does matter from a distance, because it's your eye, your retina, the rods, the cones and everything in the back of the eye that have to work on that. They have to work on the light coming in, and then they have to work on the colour coming in, and how it all gets mixed up for your brain to work out what you're looking at, which is really quite remarkable when you think about it. Now, as you can imagine, because I'm all over the place with it, it's very difficult to try and explain it. It's different if you've got someone sitting there and you can have a back and forwards conversation, but it's like talking to yourself, But I'll just give you a little bit more information. I think I've put this on my phone and I can show you a picture at the same time. Hopefully, anyway. Yes, here we are. Now, I'll just turn this around, see if I can actually look at that while I'm talking. It says, although the two Seurat paintings below, that's these two, may seem more poetic than scientific, they illustrate Pointillism's calculation of colour and line. The upper picture, which measures over 10 feet across, is dotted with colours that Seurat had meticulously pre-selected from a chart constructed according to principles established by the chemist M.E. Chauvrel, and the poignancy of the lower picture here comes out of the relationship between the vertical and horizontal lines. The painting follows the formulas of Charles Henry, who hypothesized that certain linear combinations produce specific emotions in the observer. A horizontal with downward verticals for sadness, a horizontal with upward verticals for gaiety. Henry's theories are also demonstrated in the witty and energetic portrait below. Now this would be this guy here. I forgot that on the here. Painted by Signac. The picture's geometric background of flowers, circles, swirls and waves runs the gamut of emotion-churning lines that Henri claimed to have measured by mathematical equation. The subject of the picture is Felix Fenelon. He was an influential and intellectual writer who became an intimate friend of the leading Pointillists and was their dedicated spokesman for many years. Well, it really is. I mean, you can see where people get their inspiration for different cross-stitch designs, can't you? Right, so next time you're wading your way through all that confetti, just think of Seurat with his 2 years and a tiny paintbrush. He probably would have made a very good cross-stitcher. Now I'm just going to go through to see if there's anything else that I've missed here. The brain mixes the colours together, build atmosphere in his works. The eye blends the dot colours together. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I did write out about the rods and cones, but I seem to have mislaid that. Can't think why. Anyway, I'm sure you could sort that out. There's a little bit of trivia here. In late 1800s, a French chemist was working on a technique to repair tapestries. He had to take note of all the colours around the missing hole in the tapestry. The red's complementary colour is green. Different coloured dots create one colour. Printers do the same. So the modern day printer is Pointillism, because blue, black, red and yellow will make any colour, and it just squirts dots onto the paper. So there you go. He was well ahead of his time. Okay, now, yes, now I'm going to show you the progress now. I finally got to some actual stitching, you'll be pleased to know, on the Scout. Now, I was going to do a little bit of information about the man who painted it, but I think I filled your heads up with enough for one day, so I can do that next time. And just to remind you, this is the one that I'm working on. And this is as far as I've got with him. There's quite a bit of pointillism in there, I can assure you. Now this, I'll just show you the bit that it is. It's just this, sorry, just this section around here I'm doing. Yeah. And I did get lost again a little bit in here, and I've had to do my stitching on the top, just long sections of threads of cotton, you know, just coming down, because of course I've got all my gridding, so I just take it from there and just count down and go across, just to, because some of those stitches, because they're not really, don't really relate to any of the other ones, you know, with the confetti, it can be very easy to get lost in there. So that's why it's looking a bit of a mess. But I think that you can see his arm coming in there. That's, oh, what's that? Put that down there. His elbow in there going along. So I'm really quite happy with how he's coming along. And I'm not too concerned about unevenness of the stitches or anything like that, because it is an oil painting that he's done. So the actual oil painting would be very uneven anyway. So I'm not concerned about any irregularity of stitches or anything like that. But that's a little bit what I'm like. I'm a bit of a free spirit, shall we say. Yes, I'm a free spirit. Now, was there anything else I wanted to say? I don't think so. Just to let you know that I'm still working on my presentation of Mary, Queen of Scots. I've decided that the best thing to do would be to give you a shortened history of her life. I mean, it's not history tube, it's Flosstube. So I won't indulge myself too much. But it's only really to give you a bit of background, because I think the background to Mary's life and what happened to her very much related to her stitching. So, and apart from anything else, it was a very interesting life that she had, you know. So anyway, was there anything else? No, I don't think so. I think I've bored you for long enough. If you've borne with me this far, thank you very much for doing that. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. So it's goodbye from Stitch Bliss Corner.